1 2 1 2. Welcome to a different attic. So my partner and I, we drove 2 days across Europe through some pretty amazing weather last week, and I am now in rural Poland whilst my wife and her mother are trekking in the Tatra Mountains. I'm staying behind to look after the dogs, which is proving entertaining because there's 3 of them. One of them bites and one of them is completely neurotic. Bless them. Before Zoff left, we put up a pull-up bar in the back garden. So basically, I've got 2 weeks of walking dogs, writing articles, and training pretty hard, which is a fun way to spend a couple of weeks over the summer. Just before we left, I published a video and an article about how I'd discovered that I'd become a landscape photographer. I didn't think too much about the label at the time, because I'm not really one for labels. You know, I've been a lot of different things over the last 18, 19 years of taking photographs. You know, I don't really think of myself as an extreme sports photographer or an architectural photographer or a portrait photographer. So when I said, oh, I've become a landscape photographer, it was just a way of thinking about a personal journey that I'd gone through as a result of the global pandemic and living in a huge forest. But that upset a few people because it seems that you can't be a landscape photographer unless you're using super expensive equipment, you're focus stacking, you're getting up at 4 o'clock to walk up mountains, you're exposure bracketing, all of this stuff. So with that in mind, I think this video is going to make those people even angrier, because today I'm going to talk about how I use a super cheap lens, which is on that table over there. 1 second. A super cheap lens for photographing the forest. So yeah, I use this lens. This is the Seven Artisans 35mm photoelectric f1.4. I don't know why they call it photoelectric, because there is nothing electronic about this lens. There is nothing, no electrical parts, no connections, nothing. It's manual focus. It's a manual aperture ring as well. And it cost, I think it's on sale for $200 thereabouts, and I got sent this last year to review it by Seven Artisans, and yeah, I mean the image quality is pretty poor, but what do you expect for a 35mm f1.4 lens that costs $200? There's been a couple of these lenses that have come out over the last couple of years, very affordable, super fast, and fun more than anything. They're not serious tools necessarily. Sometimes you will get really good results, but generally the image quality is not great. So f2 contrast isn't bad, but then when you drop down to f1.4, it's almost like you've got a Tiffin Pro Mist filter or maybe a Moment Cinebloom filter on there that you just can't take off. So it has a real drop in contrast. Flaring is terrible, and the chromatic aberration as well can be really bad. So it's not a lens that I would recommend for any serious purposes. And you could buy instead a vintage lens and go through all the hassle of trying to find the right one through buying secondhand. You've got to attach an adapter, stuff like this. So yeah, you could go that route, have the exact same amount of fun or more, but this is what I have. I enjoy shooting with it. This is what the video is about. Why would I shoot with this lens? Well, there's a couple of different reasons. Firstly, it's tiny. I like moving light and fast, and this barely weighs more than the tiny, superb Samyang 35mm. Samyang 35mm f1.8. I like to travel light. When I'm in the forest in the mornings with the dog, catching the sunrise, I'm not there in order to take photographs. I'm there on a dog walk, and I've taken my camera with me, and I enjoy taking images as I walk. I don't really want to haul a load of expensive gear, especially if it weighs a lot, and I like getting lost. And if you're going to get lost, as you find yourself again, you don't really want to be carrying a ton of stuff that you have no real interest in using. So yeah, light and fast is my style. Also, the light in the forest changes really quickly, so there's not a lot of time to take photographs. So yeah, a single lens, prime lens is what I enjoy. I go to the forest to wander with the dog and to take the camera along as an excuse to be in the forest. And the photographs are almost a byproduct of that. I mean, don't get me wrong, I go there with the intention of taking photographs, but I'm not going out with the intention of thinking, oh, I'm going to produce an immaculate photograph today. It's like, I'll walk in the forest, we'll see what we find. The second reason is that the shallow depth of field is really good fun. You could be at f1.8 with the Samyang 35mm f1.8 that I have, but it's not quite the same. You get this extra little bit of magic down at f1.4, and part of that's the lens's idiosyncrasies as well, like the loss of contrast and just the way it behaves. Nothing's really that much in focus. But in addition, when you're in the forest taking photographs of trees, you don't necessarily want pin-sharp photographs from front to back, as you often do with a lot of landscape photography. The forest is a really messy place. There's branches everywhere, and if everything's sharp, everything is competing for attention, everything is a potential distraction. So being able to isolate a single subject or a couple of subjects and just let things drift off into the background is really nice. For me, I think this also reflects how we experience the forest as well. You can never see that far in the forest, can't be seen as well, which is part of the fun. So trying to reflect that a little bit in the photographs is I guess, something that I enjoy. And also this shallow depth of field and the loss of contrast, it all adds to the slightly magical aura that I like to try and create in the photographs. As a child and still I read a lot of fantasy fiction, and I like the idea of the forest as this magical, slightly otherworldly, almost a sanctuary, but also still threatening at the same time. So trying to bring a little bit of that feeling into the photographs is something that I enjoy, which is why I'm not afraid to go quite so heavy in the edit. And as I'll talk about later, I'm editing these photographs for me, and I'm taking these photographs for me. So I just enjoy that look and feel. Final thing is that the images have character, which is very much bound up in the shallow depth of field and the poor image quality. But also, I like the fact that the images just look different to the clean, perfect images that a lot of us try and create most of the time. And this is a bit of a chance to play and be free. I really enjoy the looseness. It doesn't matter to me if stuff isn't in focus, it isn't particularly sharp, or if there's just parts of the image where the image quality just falls apart. It's part of the fun. It's part of why I enjoy it. Should you try this? Yeah, maybe if you enjoy it. If I was trying to be a professional landscape photographer, if I was being commissioned, I would use proper equipment and I'd be a lot more considered, a lot more deliberate in what I'm doing. But I'm shooting for myself. I sell a few postcards and the odd print, but beyond that, I'm not trying to do anything with these images. So the guys who are, really protective of the term landscape photographer, I don't think you need to worry too much. I love walking in the forest during sunrise. And why would I add all the pressure of carrying loads of expensive equipment, the cost of which I can't really justify, not to mention all of the pressure of trying to come away with perfect images when I can just head out with the dog, throw a camera over my shoulder. Speaking of dogs, that's the neurotic one. So why would I add all the pressure of trying to come back with technically perfect images when I just want to go for a walk in the forest? As usual, thank you for listening. You can help me out by clicking on the thumbs up. You can subscribe. You could buy presets. You can find me on Patreon. You can do other things that help the video, like sharing it. I don't know. There's a list of things I'm supposed to say here. So I hope you've enjoyed it. Be sure, leave a comment. There we go. Yeah, be sure to leave a comment below. See you next time.